All right, everybody. My name is Rob, and I'm one of the guys on the Realmworks team. Um, Realmworks is actually my idea years ago, like years and years ago, that finally we decided we'd take the plunge and make it a reality. So I think I can answer most questions on the tech side, business side, etc. So fire away when you've got questions. The one thing I want to be very mindful of is the last time I did a seminar like this, it ended up becoming a Q&A for about 75% of the time, and there was a lot of stuff I didn't get to cover. So I'm going to try to be very brief in my answers. I'm going to do my best to answer all your questions, but there may be certain questions that I will say, stop by the booth. I'll be happy to answer it over the rest of the weekend when it's convenient for you. I'm not trying to diss you at all. It's really just a matter of I want to keep this the seminar on track so we can cover a lot of ground during it. First, quick question: who all here has been using Realmworks for at least a month or two? Great. Who here is like pretty darn new to Realmworks? Okay. By new, have you at least tinkered with it some, or did you just like buy it, a couple days ago and you've installed it and sort of looked at it and gone, oh, now what?
And watch the tutorials.
You watched the tutorials, okay.
I bought it 15 minutes ago.
Okay. Okay. And then there were two others of you.
I think we have mine. I haven't
I
done
think
anything with it yet. I'm just installed.
Got it. Okay. Then a disclaimer for especially you three gentlemen. This is a more, like in-depth seminar. So I'm going to be going into nooks and crannies, and I'm going to be glossing over. I'll touch on briefly some of the basics. If you guys saw a demo, I'll just reintroduce the terminology, and then you guys should be fine. Or if you saw the tutorials and such. But beyond that, there may be certain things I go over that will be Greek to you right now. So sorry about that. But we are recording this, so it should be available as a download through the website and our YouTube channel within the next couple weeks after we get back from the show. So at that point, you can watch it and fill in the gaps, and stuff will then start to make sense to you. Apologies, my throat is dying here, so I'm going to try to drink a little vitamin C, but my voice is what it is, and I will do my best. So please bear with me. All right. So first of all, as I just mentioned, sort of assuming some basic product familiarity, I'm going to try to focus on trying to get the most out of Realmworks and some tips and tricks and approaches we're using for certain things that I think will, if you haven't seen them yet, will make your life a lot smoother. I'm going to be focusing on selected items from the tips and tricks guide, and then showing off a couple additional things that aren't in that tips and tricks guide at this point. And I'm also going to be using as examples some of the content we've already entered that's going to be available once the content market launches, such as like Pirate's Guide to Freeport from Green Running, and then a few other different things like that. I'm also going to be showing off a few bits from Rise of the Rune Lords, which is Pathfinder. And just as a disclaimer, we do not have a license in place with them. We are converging at this point. I think we are that signing a license is definitely the light at the end of the tunnel is near. But disclaimers in that this is not. There's no guarantees that Rise of the Rune Lords at this point in time will be available. We certainly hope that's going to be the case. All right, so quick content overview. The terminology I'm going to be using regularly, there's topics, which are basically, that's the term we use, a generic term for where you put your content. Whether it's a person or a place or a thing, an event, it all is a topic. Topics are comprised of sections and snippets. You guys are probably all familiar with, wikis and Wikipedia and that sort of stuff, where there's like a heading to a section and then there's a bunch of text within it and it basically an outline, pretty familiar format. We use the term sections and snippets to reflect the groupings and then the individual paragraphs in a wiki. But in our case, snippets are, I'll get into them in a moment in a bit more detail, but snippets are more than just like a paragraph. They will often be a paragraph, but they will also quite frequently be smaller granularity than that. I'll get to why that is in a minute. Articles are very similar to topics, but we make that distinction that an article is pretty much generally reference material, game mechanics, a bestiary entry, that type of thing. Plots, all about storyboarding your the various plot lines that you've got within your campaign. Notes, you can make a bunch of notes, and then objects. It's just a generic term we use for whether it's a map, a picture, an audio clip, a Hero Lab portfolio, anything like that. That is just something that's not part of the RealmWorks system that you will, but that we integrate in cleanly. And then you can view either internally, or in the case of like images and such, or externally in the case of like a Hero Lab portfolio that gets sent out. Audio clips, well, we basically tell the operating system, play this sort of thing. And then there's the notion of what we call smart images. Smart images are typically used for maps, but they can be used for pretty much anything. And that's basically an image with a bunch of pins on top of it that you can then use to click and navigate around within your content. So the core mechanics that that RealmWorks is built around is what we call fog of world. And that has to do with revealing, whether it's topics, snippets, plots, map pins, what have you. Revealing is a very integral part of the concept with RealmWorks. Linking, if you think of wikis, everything's cross-linked and such. Well, one of the real beauties on RealmWorks is it will do auto detection of all those links, so you don't have to manually set them up, which is a huge time saver. And then there's relationships. So whether that's relationships between people, relationships between companies, or it could be, what's the word I'm looking for, countries and how they feel towards each other. You can also use relationships to identify an alternate form of containment. So for example, you can use a relationship to set up a residence relationship. So you can actually have Fred, I will use the word Fred repeatedly. I'm horrible at creative names, so Fred is my go-to guy. And when not Fred, you'll hear George. So just disclaimers. With a relationship, you can have Fred lives in Timbuktu. And let's say you've got somebody who actually travels between, he's like a traveling merchant if you're running a fantasy campaign, and travels between City 1 and City 2. So where do you put him? Do you put him in City 1? Do you put him in City 2? Well, he's also the lieutenant of the big bad evil guy, and so I want to put him with the evil organization that the big bad evil guy, the cabal that he oversees. Within a pure simple containment structure, you really have one choice. What relationships let you do is establish all those tendrils out into all the different ways the content connects to each other. And relationships are important because relationships can be individually and independently revealed. Containment, that has to do with just the hierarchy. The key thing with containment for the new folks that probably aren't familiar with this, an important aspect of containment is a topic can only be contained by one other topic. It can't be contained by 3 or 4 different things. That's where the relationships come in to give you that the different axes of connections. And then tags, you guys probably have seen tags in different applications you've used where you can basically assign keywords effectively to things. It makes it a fast way to do searches and filters. Aliases, it's pretty common in RPGs to have like shortened names or nicknames that different people are known by. So you've got, Batman is the Dark Knight, and there's a whole different slew of names there. And then we've got player viewing, which is in play and online. Uh, if you're interested in more depth on these things, definitely that's beyond this. That's not the scope of this seminar. So stop by the booth. We'll be happy to walk you through all the details of that stuff. All right, so tips and tricks. Important thing with Realmworks to keep in mind is it's a Swiss Army knife. Now, how many of you have used a Swiss Army knife before? Everybody, right? How often do you use every single tool in that Swiss Army knife? Especially if it's one of those Mondo things with 50 things in it, 50 different blades, screwdrivers, corkscrews, what have you. There's probably the 4 or 5 tools that are your go-to tools out of that Swiss Army knife. And the others, well, you might use once in a while, or when the need arises, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's on there. Think of Realmworks that way. There are a slew of different tools within Realmworks, and that is because there are probably, if there's 20 people in this room right now, 25, something like that, there's going to be 20 to 25 different ways of DMing. And each of you is going to look at things from a different perspective and want different tools and not care about others. So pick and choose the ones that make sense to your game, your style, what's going to boost your efficiency with preparing and running your game, and ignore the others until the need arises. One problem with Realmworks that exists with it right now is because it can do so many things, it's easy to look at it and go, where the heck do I start? There's so many different options. My next slide is going to focus on different ways of getting started, but start small, set up a Sandbox Realm, and then play around a bit, figure out what you want, what you need, and then use that approach. Now, I guess it's two slides in. Just kind of experiment, create a Sandbox Realm. You don't need to get it right the first time. Realmworks is pretty darn forgiving, in that if you change your approach, you can change how you do things. Do not fill in everything. Realmworks is like a big blank canvas that also gives you a whole bunch of prompts. So it's like if I go into Realmworks here and I create, let's go ahead and just bring up a new tab, and then let's just add a new event, something simple. So a new incident. And you'll see we've got all these different blanks. And you want to create some pretty simple thing for your game. Don't worry about filling on the blanks. If you look at like an individual entry for like an NPC, that sort of stuff, you'll see all the stuff about backstory and relationships, the organizations associated with it. It's like, use the bits that you need. What that's there for is it's a way to basically fuel ideas, to get your creative juices going if you reach a point where you start running cold. So you can start thinking, oh, what about that? What about this? That's all it's there for. Leave them blank until you need them. And if you find that there are certain aspects that it's like too much of a temptation to actually have that stuff there, that you feel like you must fill it in, go into the category management mechanism and turn off the things you don't want. So they're hidden. It's not that they're deleted. They're just hidden from the default view, and you can get them back whenever you want. So don't be a slave to Realmworks. It's a temptation for some folks. Because if you're like me, a lot of gamers have that completist, got it, must do it all. Exactly. Realmworks will be your bane if you fall into that trap. All right, so choose an approach. There's 4 primary different approaches for getting started with Realmworks. There's starting with the topics, breadth first. So you've got an idea of like, okay, well, there's these 5 NPCs, and then there's the organization, there's these 2 governments involved, and then I've got these 5 or 6 different ideas for like events that are going to happen within the plot line, and there's this one magic item that everything sort of centers around. It's the catalyst for it all. Get those topics in, just get their names in, and then put a few notes in them and bounce back and forth between them. Realmworks has all the tab support, so if you want, you can basically put a different one in each tab, and you can just flip back and forth between them. The second approach is to go with a depth first, where, think Lord of the Rings, everything centers around the ring. And that's the anchor point for everything. So you basically just flesh that out in detail, and that then starts identifying the pieces that hook onto it. That becomes like your center point, and everything tendrils out from there. Maps and images, there's a lot of visual folks out there that will basically start with a map, and they've got a great idea for a campaign that works with this map. So at that point, start with a smart image. Basically, the map is for a region, so create a topic for the region, put a smart image in there with the map for that region, and then just start putting pins on it. And then you can go back and hook those pins up to topics as you want to flesh out the various topics at different locations. From there, that will take you into the various events that tie that stuff together, etc., and everything just sort of expands outward. And then last is plots. Some people just have like just this wonderful idea for a storyline, and plots let you basically outline that story in like a flowchart type of format. And from there, you can basically rearrange things, put forks into it. You can also set up subplots to drill down in. And so then from that point, you can then start creating the topics to flesh out what the different scenes are in your plots, and then with the NPCs that get involved and that type of thing. So if you're not sure which is best for you, create that sandbox realm and experiment a little. And figure that your first sandbox realm, don't try to make it your real realm. Create a second realm for your campaign, and after you experiment with stuff, great. Go then start your campaign up, get that fleshed out, and then you can go back to your sandbox and play with other new aspects of Realmworks in a safe sandbox. That's why I keep calling it a sandbox realm, that won't contaminate your main campaign. So if you play with a couple different approaches, and then you go, oh, I like this one, now you've got a handle on it, and you can dive straight in. All right, so getting content in. One of the very first things you want to do first and foremost is get your topic names in, because the topic names drive all the automatic link detection. If the topic is not in your realm, and you enter a content that references that name, it doesn't know to hook it up to anything at that point in time. So until you go back to that original topic and make edits and go to change it, that's the only time Realmworks will go, oh, I need to look for links again. So it's best and also easiest to get all the names in, and that's where using Quick Create comes in, and I'll actually show how that works. I could be here in this topic, and I could be typing in a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to type gibberish here, and I think of, oh, this involves Fred. Fred, I didn't warn you about that. Control Q for quick create. I can come up, oh, Fred is actually an NPC, so I go with an individual, and then I can enter Fred, create it, boom, and now I can go back, keep typing sort of thing, and then when I save, it knows about Fred, and it'll automatically detect it. So I don't have to go off to some other different area to try to go create Fred, then come back and break up my creative thought process. I can just go ahead and just be typing away here, and I can say yes, and I can keep coming in here and then say mention George. Oops. And then I can save again, and notice it did not connect to George. If I instead come in here and then type in George, come back, it's got it, save, now it's going to pick up George. But if I had instead said quick create before doing that save, it would have known about George the same way it knew about Fred.
Control Q.
Control Q. Q for quick, because the idea is just quick it, and C is used pretty standard for copy, so didn't want to step on that. All right, so I've got my links in here. I'll switch back. Oh, one thing on Quick Create that I will show you. there's the advanced stuff here. When you do quick create, you can specify what container does this live in. So if this is really valuable for like locations and that sort of stuff, or anything that you want to automatically to start out underneath something else within the hierarchy. You can pick that here. It'll remember what the last thing you chose was. You can also add stuff to views, which I will get to a little bit further into this seminar. You can assign tags, and you can also set up aliases straight away. So if I was entering, Batman, I'd just go in here and just add Dark Knight as an alias in here, so I don't have to go back and do that later. And I can then in my text refer to him as either Batman or the Dark Knight, and both will link up automatically for me. All right. Next is to disambiguate your topics. It is not that uncommon to have multiple topics with the same name. For example, you might have let's say you're playing sort of like a sci-fi game or something like that, even a modern game, where you've got the city named Boston, and you've got the ship named the Boston. Well, you got two things Boston. So which one's which? Well, you can tell that based on the category that the item is, that the topic is associated with. One's going to be a vehicle. The other one's going to be a community. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. But then, what if you've got? And this is a game we used to have in an old cyberpunk game that my group ran. If anything ever went south on a job, then the plan was to always meet back at the next prime number from the last mission where something went wrong, cycled down in the phone book of the Denny's in the phone book. So it's like, how many Denny's are there in a given city of any reasonable size? I'm guessing Indianapolis has at least 2. Based on that, how do you differentiate between them? Within Realmworks, we've got the notion of a suffix here. So when you're entering the name for something, if you want to differentiate it, you can just type in, this could be, if this was Denny's, it could be Denny's number 42. Or it could be Denny's, and then you could indicate the neighborhood that it's in. It doesn't matter, however you want. But the important thing is differentiate stuff, because if you have 3 instances of Denny's and you then go to do the automatic linking, you'll see 3 listed there, and you'll go, which one is that? And you won't be able to tell. So if you have a suffix on it or a prefix on it, that will be shown, and so you can instantly go, oh, that's that one, and you can pick the right one from the list. Then the other thing is prefixes. Prefixes are right in here. Prefixes are ideally focused on map codes and anything you want to do explicit ordering. So for example, I've got a tab set up here where you can see, like here in Freeport, there's the old city, and in there's a variety of different locations. And then like Talzavar's shop, there's actually a number of different locations within that. So this might be room codes within a dungeon map, or it could be just the whatever numbering system you might use for identification. It doesn't necessarily need to be numbers. Whatever identification system you use for stuff on like an overland map, or it could be quadrants for a galactic map, whatever. But that's where the prefix comes in to identify stuff. And then you can toggle on and off up here whether to actually show stuff, whether to show the prefix, and whether to sort based on it. Right now I've got everything set up to sort on the prefix if it's there and to show it, but I can turn that stuff off. So in here, where that comes in really handy is now I've got everything organized by the codes that are on the map that came in this case from the publisher. So everything is quick and easy to reference that way. If I, if I want to, the various codes could also be something like C2, C12, what have you. And the important thing there is we use what's called natural sorting. When you guys think of, C1, C2, C3, C4, then you get to C10, C11, C12, That's the order you think of them in, right? Well, most computers go C1, C10, C11, C12, C2, C3, and that's not what you want. So we actually we've implemented what's called natural sorting on that. So stuff should show up in the order you think it should show in. And if you find a bug in that, let us know. There was one a month or so ago that we got to get fixed. Um, all right, so I think that covers all that stuff. Any questions so far? Okay, great. So what makes a good snippet? The bottom line on a snippet is it is entirely subjective to how you run your game. But the basic premise is it is an individually revealable piece of information. So in a lot of times, if you get like, especially with printed material you'd buy from, one of the very many publishers that are out there, they'll have a paragraph about some piece of the adventure. In it, they will talk about Fred, George, two different locations, and then they'll have, out of all of that, how George hate each other secretly, but outwardly they're best friends, or they're tacit allies, that sort of stuff. And there'll be two side notes that are just for you, the GM, that will never actually be revealed to the players. So out of that one paragraph of text, there might actually be 6 snippets worth of information, 4 of which the players may or may not learn depending on what they do at different points in the game, and 2 of which are just going to be there for you and just reference material. Like, this is how to set up this interaction when it happens. So what makes a good snippet is totally based on how you want to reveal information to your players. If you tend to work in broad strokes, then snippets may actually be pretty lengthy bits of text in general. If you work in a lot of detail and especially play the sorts of games where there's a lot of little intrigue with little breadcrumbs you'll leave with clues to what's going on within that intrigue, then you'll probably find yourself with a fair number of very short snippets. So size is not important. The other thing that comes in with snippets is tags. If you have tags, with a given tag-based snippet, you can actually add multiple different tags. So let's say something, an NPC, I'm just going to use a fantasy example. Let's say an NPC is a rogue sorcerer. Well, you might just attach to that NPC the rogue tag and the sorcerer tag. The problem with that is, how are you going to run that character? If you're running that NPC as the players think he's a rogue, and somewhere down the line there's the big surprise of, oh crap, he's a sorcerer too. We did not see that coming. Then you don't want to reveal that he's a sorcerer at the same time you want to reveal that he's a rogue. So at that point, you want to make sure you split those tags into 2 separate snippets, just like you would the text if you had text describing those 2 different bits. Then the last thing is GM direction snippets. GM directions are notes for you. They cannot be accidentally revealed to the players. So if I switch back here to Realmworks, this is not a good example, but here on Freeport, you can see here, like, this is a GM directions only snippet. You see how it's got the border, the different background, whereas this one here has both GM directions and it has a revealable portion. If I reveal this particular snippet, only this text down here is going to be revealed to the players. This information up here is not. So this is basically context information that's useful for you as a GM, and you can basically determine, if you want, you could go ahead and reveal this bit of information to the players. Sure. At that point, you would just put it into the revealable portion of the snippet, and then it's fully revealable. So when you're setting up stuff, it's very easy for you to add your own, might be stage directions, might be, a common thing is with a DC check of 20 plus, they'll learn the following information. You don't want the players to know that it was a 20 plus they needed to roll on their check. You just want them to know the information or not know the information. It might be when this happens, or if the PCs ask this question, then they get this information. So you may not want them to know that contingency or that requirement that's going on there. GM directions are great for that. And you can use GM directions on map pins. You can use it on plot points. You can use it throughout the product. All right. Questions at this point? Awesome. All right, so efficient topic editing. One of the important things, I feel at least, in RealmWorks is the ability to get content in reasonably quickly. So we've got a number of things in place to try to facilitate that. One of the important things in my mind is if you're typing, for most people, the last thing you want to do is stop, take your hand off, find the mouse or the trackball, and then have to go click somewhere else and then start typing again. You also don't want to hit tab or shift tab a dozen times because we've got all the additional controls here to go through. And so I don't want to cycle through all these and before I can actually get to typing the next thing. So we've actually wired it up so I can use the arrow keys. This is just using the up arrow key and the down arrow key to go straight through stuff. So it works just like your favorite word processor where you can just navigate through. It's like a bunch of sequential paragraphs that you can go ahead and edit. I can also go in here, if I type in a fair bit of stuff, and if I do a control up arrow, it'll jump an entire snippet at a time. And same thing with the down. So again, trying to be nice and efficient about it for you. When you're trying to add snippets, we've got both Control N and Control T. Control N will bring up a menu, what type of snippet you want to add. But if you remember Control T, T for text, it'll add a text. Oh, that's like come down here where something interesting happened. You'll go ahead and add a text snippet, and I'm off and running. So I want to add a new snippet, Control T, and I'm off and going. What else is important? Yes, splitting and merging. Let's say I'm just typing in a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't want to worry about breaking stuff up into snippets. I can just type a long paragraph of stuff, or multiple paragraphs, and then I can go back and carve it up later. So I can say, well, let's see here. This looks like where I want to start the new snippet. Control Enter, which is the same thing you use for a page break in your word processor. It will actually insert a new break right there, split off the snippet, so you can easily carve stuff up. If you use Control M, up on the previous one, looks like we broke it. Control M for merge should merge two snippets together. All of these commands, if you forget them, so I could go in and go with the text content, different options to do, GM directions, split snippet, and merge is not enabled. Why is merge? Oh, because I have to do the one above. Yes, there we go. That's why. So merge, it says Control M, but Control M isn't working. But if I actually select it from the menu, it spliced them back together. And Control M should be doing that, and I'll make sure we get it fixed for the next release. And then lastly, how many of you guys tend to use published material, bringing stuff in like from PDFs, that type of stuff? Okay, Control-Alt-V is your friend. If you're bringing stuff in from PDFs, PDFs will basically, don't get me started on PDFs. You will frequently find that PDFs shove a new line after every single line of text, and it's just ugly as sin to deal with. So going ahead and reconstructing reconstituting everything is a very labor-intensive process if you want to get it back into something within RealmWorks. What you can do, and I should have set up a PDF to do this, and I'm not going to take the time to do it. If you use Control-Alt-V, which is basically paste special, the unformatted text as a single paragraph option is what will happen by default if you use Control-Alt-V. Normally use Control-V for paste, Control-Alt-V. That will actually paste content out of the PDF in with you ripping out all those line breaks and such. So all you need to do then is go through and do Control enter at the sentences or whatever to break that up into the snippets that you want it to.
Does it replace it with space?
Yes. Yeah. It just replaces it with a space and turns it into one flat, contiguous stream of text.
I got a question about styles.
Sure.
Sometimes when I paste from a PDF, I get a bunch of styles from the PDF, and some of those styles I really like. Is there any way I can make it so that, and I only see that style when I'm on that snippet. Is there any way I can import styles or move styles around or anything like that?
Not at the present time. One of the things, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but hey, what the hell? You came here to Gen Con for a reason, right? One of the things that we're doing with the content market is we're in the process of migrating all the content within RealWorks over to be HTML as well. And with that, one of the big bugaboos we never thought of when we first started with RealWorks was RTF, rich text is what we use within RealWorks. And the way rich text is set up, it pretty much defies allowing you to actually set up like a reusable style outside of each snippet, because each snippet has to be a completely self-contained document as far as rich text is concerned. So that means any sort of styles you would define and reference are unique to that snippet. So as part of the transition to everything into HTML, one of the things we're laying the groundwork for, it won't be in the initial rollout, but we're basically setting things up so that we can ultimately let you create like defined styles that are global to your entire realm. And then you can simply reuse them within your as you see fit within your content.
So would you be able to edit the source HTML as well as the regular?
The source.
Well, in the snippet, right? So just having the straight up text, you can look at the source of it, actually see the HTML tags and modify it that way. Mark up that text.
That's one of the things that we would be able to do at that point. Yes, yes. That's one of those things that probably won't be made available soon, simply because that's something that clearly you're not scared of that sort of stuff. You're comfortable with it. But I know, like from my gaming group, there's the middle school art teacher who would run for the hills at the thought of I need to look at HTML. No, thank you. No, I know how to hit the bold button. That I can do. So stuff that's more for a more narrowly focused set of advanced users are probably things that would be follow-on capabilities we would do after getting the first wave of all the core functionality into place. So just want to set expectations appropriately. It's definitely something that we're definitely, that's the path we're going. But I don't want you to think that's going to be out in a few months.
Right.
Okay. So that covers all the topic editing tricks with keyboard shortcuts. Any questions on that stuff? All right, so aliases. Aliases are ideal for plurals. Okay, so for example, you've got goblin. Well, the word goblins probably appears a lot of times in your content too, and you want that to hook up. But you don't want to create a new new topic for goblins, obviously. So setting up plurals, nicknames. Batman, the Dark Knight is a perfect analogy there. First and last names. You may have, you also may have something where it's Sir Frederick of Yountville the Great. Okay, do you really want to type that everywhere? No. So you might just call him Fred, my favorite. You might call him Sir Fred. You might call him Sir Frederick. He might be referred to as 5 different names in different places based on what you feel like typing at the time. So you can just set that up as a set of aliases for him. Another great thing is NPCs used in locations. Now, one of the important things that, for this, I should just go ahead and, what the heck is that? Just ignore that, deal with that. All right, so let's actually go up and I'm going to switch here to Rise of the Rune Lords real quick. One thing that it will be very tempting to do if you're the very detail focused person, is to put everything in. You'll feel like you need a topic for George the baker, when the bakery that George runs is maybe something where they'll find a clue, maybe, and George is irrelevant to the campaign as a whole. The moment you do that, now you've got another topic sitting there off to the left, cluttering things up for something completely irrelevant to the campaign. Don't create George the NPC as a topic. Instead, do something like, here we've got a location, a shop out of Rise of the Runelords in Sandpoint, and it's run by a guy named Nisk. So basically, I've got a single snippet in here about who Nisk is. And this is all the PCs will ever find out about Nisk. So basically, the fact that he's actually got the various class levels, you see his GM directions, so that's for your eyes only. And it's just, that's it. That's all they need to know. That's all that you care about. So now I can actually add an alias. The players will worry about, the place called Bottle Solutions. But then they'll go, let's say you've got a oil flare. Some GMs really, really bring a lot of life and character to NPCs. And so that's how the PCs remember him. It's like, oh yeah, Nisk was so cool because I love that voice you did, or what have you. At that point, well, they wouldn't be able to find Bottled Solutions based on Nisk. But if you've added Nisk as an alias for it, then Nisk and Bottled Solutions both show up, and there are ways you can get access to the exact same place within your content without requiring yet another topic. Now I've got it set up right now so that Nisk actually shows up here, but I can toggle whether aliases are or aren't shown in the navigation pane to the left. So that's that little trick. Aliases are fully linked. So just like I had mentioned earlier, getting all your topic names into place first, get your aliases in as well. Because if your aliases are in, they will be automatically detected and links set up to them. So if I would go in and I were to type in text referring to Nisk, now that Nisk is an alias, it will detect it, offer to set up that link for me. So any content that references Nisk will actually take me to Bottled Solutions, where Nisk actually exists. Another key thing with aliases, they are fully revealable. So you can actually create aliases that the players will never see. You can also create aliases that the players don't know have meaning until later. So you can set up a situation where you mention some term as like just an offhand comment made by some NPC that later turns out to have been a little breadcrumb you gave the players that they really didn't have any way to grasp onto. Later on, when they learn about that name and you reveal it to them, now the links links will start showing up automatically from the content where you'd hooked that up originally. The last thing with aliases is don't go crazy. Some people feel compelled to think of, Batman. There's at least a half dozen, nicknames that are used for him, and you could go to the trouble of listing all of them as aliases. But if you're only ever going to use 2 in your campaign, why do you need the other 4? Aliases are there for linking, basically. They're a way to reference something, and so don't do overkill with that sort of stuff. Any questions at this point? Okay, cool. Next thing is the World Almanac versus custom views. After you start getting, 500, 1,000 different topics into your realm, the list off to the left can become pretty darn overwhelming. So especially when you're running a game, you want to be able to get to stuff quickly. So you want a filtered down list. Now you can use the filtering mechanism, which works great. However, you can pre-filter stuff down to just what you care about in whatever combination you want with what we call custom views. So custom views are, as mentioned here, an explicit subset of content. It can be any combination of stuff that you see fit. Generally, what makes most sense with custom views, from our perspective, is something that's tied to a pared down list for a particular storyline or subplot. or a particular geographical area. Everything that's in this dungeon, or everything that's in this city, or in this, it could be in this particular, on this planet. It's probably going to be too large unless you only have one or two cities of note on a given planet. Um, so the goal is to let you keep things focused. So if I pop back over here, I could, if I wanted to, just say everything dealing with Sandpoint. Come on. Why don't I use this? It's much faster. All right. I could basically say Sandpoint, assign to views. Oh, first I need to create a view. Okay, so let's create a topic view. And I will just call it Sandpoint. And I still have trouble typing, it seems. All right. So now I've got my view, and it shows up here. And if I click on it, I'm not going to see anything. But if I come in here and then say, give me everything from Sandpoint, it'll say, do you want to assign all the contained topics? Nice and convenient. Yeah, I do. Great. Now I can switch to Sandpoint. And the entirety of the list is the stuff in Sandpoint. That's it. I can go in and then add a few more NPCs that are pertinent and that sort of stuff, and have a quickly tailored list of just the stuff that I care about for tomorrow's game session. So that way, when something comes up in the game session, you're only looking through, a screen and a half, 2 screens worth of stuff. So it's fast and easy to find it, as opposed to wading through everything. You haven't lost any of the links. So if you notice here, I can actually, I switch to the Glassworks, I've still got all the connections to everything else that either the Glassworks references or that references into the Glassworks. So I can get to everything. It's just not shown in the navigation pane on the left. That's all the view filters down for you. So it's not like you're going to lose information. If there's something that you think you might run into, you don't necessarily have to add it in the navigation pane, add it to the view so you can see the navigation pane. If there's a link from something that that's already in there, then you can readily get to it. Okay, so you can invert the views. So I can also go in and say, show me everything that's not in this view. And here's everything that is not in Sandpoint. And I can toggle between that quick and easy. And then the main thing with custom views is that I have found, besides just the containment shorthand that we just showed, is alternate axes of containment. So for example, I could set up everything that is associated with the evil cabal. I could have that be a view. So all the different organizations that they are in, that they've infiltrated and they've got relationships with, all of the NPCs that are involved with that, any key items or technologies that are special to that evil cabal, I can have it all quick and easily identifiable through that one view. And then at the top within Realmworks, as you saw that I could just add that to the ribbon bar, I can add multiple views to the ribbon bar here. And so I can actually just click on them to switch between them very fast and easy. If there are views that you don't want to necessarily see frequently, you can also go in and just, you'll see all of them listed here. So if I were to create a view and call it Fred, because I love Fred, and I don't show it in the ribbon bar, it'll now show up here, so I can readily get to it even though it's not in the ribbon bar. So fast and easy way to organize and manage your content. Yes, sir?
How do you change it after it's created? Just showing the ribbon bar or not?
I just go into the, manage topic views, and there's Fred showing the ribbon, and done, and now Fred is up here on the ribbon. And if I want to take it out, exact same way, quick and easy. Other questions? All right, then give you a little bit of heads up on some of the stuff that's coming, because it ties in closely with topic names and aliases and whatnot. We are in the next release of the next meaningful release of Realmworks, well before Content Market comes out. we are going to be implementing these basic features. All topic names will be controllable as to whether or not it's revealable or not. One situation that the GMs run into these days is they've got somebody who the players are first introduced to as the mysterious stranger in the black hat. Well, that means you have to set the topic name as the mysterious stranger in the black hat, and an alias is the actual name of the NPC. You can do that, but it's less than ideal. So all topic names will become separately revealable from the topic itself. So the name is just a piece of information associated that can be revealed separately. We'll also be able to let you control whether names are shown within the navigation pane. This is really useful. So let's say you create that goblins plural form of, so you get the links to match it. You don't need to see goblins and goblin in the navigation pane at the same time, but right now you will see them if you also want to see, for example, there was NISC and bottled solutions. Aliases are aliases, so it's all or nothing. So this will give you individual control over this alias shows up, this alias never shows up. Automatic link detection, we're going to add this ability for case matching. All this is mostly working back at the office. The automatic link detection of case comes in really handy. Let's say you have a skill like knowledge. Knowledge shows up quite a lot in normal text, and all you really care about is if it's capitalized. Yeah, it's probably something I want to link. If it's not capitalized, don't bother me with it. So you can set stuff up with that. Yeah.
Can you make it so you have one that's capitalized and one's not, and it will always propose the one that matches the case as the number one option? You know, when you have multiple hits on
Right.
search.
Right. That may be doable. I'll never remember that. So please send us an email. Send me an email. Or tonight is fine. Now is fine if you want. But that way I'll see it when I get back to the office and then can actually do something about it. That may very well be doable. Then auto accept. There's a lot of names that right now, any name that's a potential match, we get your confirmation on. There's some names that you're just like, yes, yes, yes. I'm tired of saying yes. Get out of my face. So it's basically you can just say auto accept. If it matches this name, then do it already and don't bother me. And then we're also going to set up. This ties into your question here a moment ago, sir. The matching priority, where you can designate something as a preferred match, an avoid match, or a never match this. You may actually have an alias or a name. It could be, this is something, the storeroom. Okay, you don't want to match it anywhere because it's going to show up in 25 different locations in your game, and you're going to have 25 of them, and nothing should be matching it, but you're going to have references to them, within the text of stuff, and it's just, I don't want to be bothered with this. So you'll be able to say never match this. And then lastly, we're going to have auto detection of tags, so that right now it can actually be fiddly to, when you see text, you've got the text that's there, but then you have to create a matching tag if you want to do tag filtering on it. We're going to actually set it up so tags can be auto detected and automatically assigned to snippets that match the text that's in them. That way you can do a tag-based search on the content, or you can do a text-based search on the same topic and the same content, whatever floats your boat better. Yes, sir.
I just had a question about how you had the base topic names being revealable. We might have the mysterious man in the black hat. What happens if later you want to say the mysterious man in the black hat did something? You would have originally wrote that down as the topic name. If it was Bob, you would say Bob did something. You're going to reveal that to the players. Now you need to make that. You would have to make a second entry that says the same thing, that says I'm only going to reveal this because they only know the mysterious man in the black hat.
At that point, why not just always refer to him as a mysterious man in the black hat? If you're going to reveal that snippet before they know that his name is Bob, then you know that, and you know that. So you can refer to him as the mysterious man in the black hat. Um, if you if you refer to him as Bob, that won't show up as a link. It won't identify. It will not show up to the players as the same thing as the mysterious man in the black hat. It'll just be some guy named Bob who we know nothing about. Did X, and so the fact that the alias is not revealed means that the text associated with that alias name, if it shows up, you know it maps back to the guy, and you'll see that. But the players will not see a link there. You'll see a link there. That's true today in just the normal topic behavior. If and this is something you can leverage if you want, where you've got text that refers to the refers to some item in an off, and if you haven't revealed that item, it'll just be the name of the item, but there'll be nothing for it to link to, and the players are still trying to figure out what is this thing. So anything that is not revealed by you will not show up to the players, period. And there are times you can use that as a clue for the players. You can also use it as something that you drop a hint about something where they're not really looking for it, and then later down the line when you reveal, oh, that was important, oh, that was important, and the players go, damn it, you gave us those clues and we didn't see them. You don't have, just like you would do when running your game, you can basically set that up within Realmworks. In the case you just cited, though, it sounds to me like you would know in advance that the players don't know that the mysterious stranger is actually Bob at the time they're going to learn that piece of information, correct?
Well, and you could imply that, but at the same time, you could also find out that one of the players did find out his name was Bob, and now you still wrote it wrong, and now I guess it doesn't matter because they still know that the mysterious man is Black Cat, so I think I'm okay.
Okay. The other thing you can do, which kind of that maybe sort of tangential to that, but related, is let's say you've got a game with that involves like Batman, and the players get to know Batman, the players get to know Bruce Wayne, and they learn a lot about Batman, they learn a lot about Bruce Wayne, but the fact that Bruce Wayne is Batman is like the big reveal you've got planned for 10 sessions down the line, sort of thing. At which point they go, oh crap, you can set up two different topics. One as Bruce Wayne with a whole bunch of information, one as Batman with a whole bunch of information, and you can set up what we call an equivalence relationship. And so down inside of Realmworks, everything, they're two separate topics, but they are identified as the same thing. And at that point, you can actually, where relationships are revealable, you can reveal that relationship to the players. And at the time, you do the big reveal in the game. So you can do that within Realmworks. You had a question back there? Okay. Okay, perfect. Vulcan mind meld. Any other questions on this stuff? All right. So diving into some examples, grouping topics is something that is a big question mark for a lot of folks, because it's like, I've got all these topics. How do I organize them? How should I want to get them into I want to like wrangle them into some containment hierarchy that makes sense. So when you're thinking about that, the most important thing to think about is the physicality of something. As I used in some of the examples earlier, you could have an NPC that belongs to a couple of organizations. You could have that same NPC being living in a few different places. Where should this NPC reside? It's really important to think in terms of how do you physically where do you see that person physically being associated, and setting up stuff along those lines. From our perspective, for NPCs that live in like a small town, like we had Nisk who lives in Sandpoint. Let's say you've got an NPC that's a little more prominent, the mayor of Sandpoint, that you'll interact with on a nominal basis. probably just belongs in Sandpoint. Or you could say, I don't want that that NPC to actually be put underneath a location. I want that NPC to be grouped with, well, all of the NPCs in my realm, so I can find all the NPCs. At that point, we have what we call list topics, and so there's cast lists. We call them cast lists because, well, NPCs are members of the cast of your game, and we're not gonna. And it may not just be NPCs. It may be some deity, or it may be some AI, or whatever. It's basically a member of the cast, just like you'd see in like a movie sort of thing. Then there's storylines, are basically where we would lump together all of the different scenes for a given like plot thread. Group lists for groups. So basically, the way we've got this organized, let me actually switch over to show you how we've got that set up in Pirate's Guide to Freeport. The important thing is to use relationships for all the tendrils. And if you don't want to use relationships because you don't really care about the reveal nature of it, you don't need to. You can also just rely on all of the automatic link detection to be able to get the web of how everything connects and such. But the key thing here is, so if I go to Freeport, all right, so the various groups, let me actually, here we go. There's a whole bunch of groups of people. So we just call them denizens, and people could be like monsters that play a prominent role, not some monster you're gonna kick the butt of at the entrance to the cave, but a monster that actually factors into the game. It could be, you've got the troll lord that you're going to actually need to negotiate with to get some sort of concessions about, okay, he factors prominently in the actual story of the game. He'd be a denizen of an area. You didn't really want to call him, you can't really call him an NPC. You could, I don't know. So we just use the term generically of denizens. And we've got the regions that they operate out of. And then in addition, there's where's like a good example. Stuff's at different levels of granularity as well. So here we've got like the Merchant District denizens. There's also Freeport denizens. Freeport is the city which the Merchant District resides within. If somebody only ever shows up in your game within the Merchant District, well, put him in the Merchant District, because if he's outside of that, he's going to clutter up the view for you when you're looking for stuff outside of that scope. Try to scope your content so it's usable to you, so you can quickly access stuff. Because I can go in and I don't care about the Merchant District, I don't care about the old city. I can just start collapsing these things to get them out of my face.
So like,
So can you have the same entry in multiple lists?
No, that's the thing. With the containment hierarchy, it only lives in one place. So choose something that is going to be make sense on like a physical permanent basis. That you can always move it. But what you don't want to find yourself getting into is you put one person here and another person in a different type of place, and now you can't find them because you've handled them differently. You want to get a consistent model that works for you. What works for you may be totally different from what we've done here. But the important thing is get a consistent model that works for how you think, so that everything is in a predictable place. So in the middle of the game, when you go to look for somebody, you can zero into them very, very quickly.
Could you put them in the denizens list? Is there snippets in the denizens?
These are topics.
Oh, they're topics, so they have snippets in them?
Yes.
You could then use that to just put the denizens in yourself manually, so that way you could have them in multiple lists.
You'd be re-entering them though,
Yeah,
so
that's
that kind of defeats the whole purpose. That's where relationships come in, in that you could actually set up a relationship between the NPC and the different organizations he's a member of, also the various government entities that he's involved in. He may be, he may be the head of the Merchants Guild turns out to be the big bad evil guy who actually is working on deals with, some people in government, some of which he's trying to dupe, others one person he's basically recruited and he's in league with. So you could put him in any of a number of different places. So it's a matter of figuring out what makes sense on a consistent basis for where to put NPCs in general, so that you don't have one guy associated with the government, another guy associated with the cabal, another guy associated with his shop, and then when you go to look for Fred, it's like, oh God, which one is he associated with? That gets annoying. So whatever works for how your mental model makes sense in your head, that's how to set it up. Just figure out something that's consistent and works well for you. This is how we've chosen to do it for content we're putting together as a kind of a generic way. Now you can also, as I mentioned earlier, use the custom views to create additional cross sections. And you can also use the link web and relationship views to see how everything maps back and forth. So you can see the different axes that way as well. Yes, sir.
How do you, in order you brought up like, so like, I'll make up a guy, we'll say there's a town guard in the merchant district. But, and invariably, your players can do things, and the way I've had issues with Realm Wars is where you start to get, they'll grab an NPC who was maybe a generic NPC at one time, but because of role play and how it was,
he's
now
become
this
important.
Is now a more important NPC.
Yep.
And maybe they then decide, well, we're going to help out this town guard because we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff over there, and we're going to get him promoted.
Okay.
And now he's not just there anymore, he's more.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an easy way to, even to a point, almost remove a topic to add it or promote it? Because
Yeah.
you want to have that view,
Right.
you want to move him up in the world, but it's hard to change a topic. And then, to me, it was just easier sometimes just to recreate it. Versus just a whole, remove them and delete
Okay.
and re-add someplace else.
So we've got the Freeport denizens here. And now let's say somebody's the town guard in one of these districts. Let's say Roscoe here at the lighthouse gets a promotion. He's a town guard and he gets a promotion because the PCs turned him into something important. And I can come on up. Come on. Oh, come on. Why aren't you? Something's odd here. All right, something's not behaving with the drag and drop stuff.
It works for me sometimes, it doesn't work for me other times.
Really, I've never had a problem with it till just now, of course, when I'm trying to demo it. Of course. So let's actually just do this. Yes. So I can just collapse it and I can move him up. And so I can just drag and drop him and now change where he's contained. So now at this point, Roscoe actually lives within Freeport. If I expand it back out, we can scroll back down and see
And he's no longer,
there's Roscoe.
He's no longer in the other district.
He's no longer in the other district. He's actually been moved at this point. But he still has all the same links to other stuff. So he still would have all the links over here to all the different people. Where did my mouse go? To all the other people he's connected to through the story.
And then when you were bringing up characters, I know it was easier for me to even add the PCs. You take little snippets about them, because there's things players know about players and there's things that they don't.
Mhm.
And if you're private, you own it, but if it's things that everybody knows about you, it's easy to put there if you want a picture for your character.
Oh, absolutely.
That kind of stuff. So characters, when you bring it up, it is characters. It doesn't have to be just NPCs. It could
Right.
be real PCs as well.
Yeah, you can be anybody and everybody in your world, whatever you want to do with it.
Yeah, and I think that works out a long time too. But they can, 'cause people lose, especially when you have a long running campaign,
Mhm.
they lose track of, did I meet so and so before?
Right. And that's one thing also where I mentioned a little bit of the link web comes in is really invaluable. Use it in your games because, especially for a long-running campaign, but even if it's a game, a gaming group that doesn't play like weekly, but let's say you get together once a month. That's me nowadays, unfortunately. Got a 2-year-old at home, so hey. So basically, when that happens, I'll get you in just a second, sir. Um, the key thing there is, um, oh man, come on, brain.
What did we do last time? It's sort
Uh,
of
it's
helpful
it's
to remember what you did last.
it's for. Um, hmm, I had an important thought, and now I can't remember it. This is so frustrating.
Journal?
So what?
The journal? The player journals?
No, this had to do with. Uh, we were just talking about. Yes, the link web. That was it. Um, Invariably in our games, there'll be the guy we met in the forest. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he had the cloak. You know, you can remember details about the NPC, but you can't remember his name. And well, everything's by the name here within Realmworks. But with the link web, you can go in and you can bring up the forest, go to the forest, make it the center of your link web view, and see everything that's connected to it. And now from there, you can go, oh, was it that guy or that guy? That's him right there. So you can quickly identify stuff using the link web. So just as a trick for you guys, don't hesitate to use. Everything is interconnected for a reason, because it makes our brains, the human brains, are associative. Everything is, how many times you hear a song and it makes you think of something totally unrelated, but some memory. Our brains are associative. And that's all about linking the content together. And that's what Realmworks is striving to do through all the links, the relationships, etc. Weave it all together so you can find whatever you need when you need it via whatever mechanism works best for your brain. Sir.
Um, I came in late, so you may have already said something about this. I don't know. Do you keep track of time with this? Could you say someone was born in 1925, and now the year is 1977, so we know how old they are?
No.
Okay.
You can record dates.
Yep.
This brings up, I'm sure there's probably at least one person here to carry the calendar standard.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, all right. The situation with calendars, as you well know, you want to just tell them? The situation,
To help us.
there's a very complex calendar mechanism in place in the core within Realmworks that is incredibly flexible and sophisticated, but the interface for it is atrocious developer interface, and it is not something that we wish to subject anyone to. So basically, there's a hell of a lot of capabilities. Excuse the French people listening on the recording. That you can do with calendars baked in at the guts, but nothing's been exposed right now. So there's the folks that are going, we want calendars, we want calendars. Yep, leading the charge here. And there's everybody asking for all these other features, and it's so frustrating that we can't get it all done as fast as we want. But so there would be that sort of stuff down the line. There's a lot of stuff built in, but nothing is available now. And calendars are something that I'm assuming will end up being, they're definitely up there in the priority list, and there's something that will be getting addressed after we get the content market. Probably not first, as you well know, but they're on the short list for after content market and web version round. Sir.
Yeah, so you were talking about them like player characters and stuff. As GM, I can put in whatever I want, but I want to be able to have the player from the player view put in notes about himself, so that he can link things in his own little flavor text.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense. Is that something that's available?
That is something we want to do. That gets really ugly when you get into, you've got all the syncing to the cloud, and who can see what, where, how, why, and who owns something. I mean, do you want a player to be able to enter something that you can't touch, you have no control over? Probably not. Most
No,
GMs
if I give
probably.
them access to one topic,
Right.
that's it.
Right.
Or if it's a journal entry or something that has linkable things in it.
Right.
Just from them putting words in. They
So-
might not see it themselves, but I would.
That's where the journal mechanism, you mentioned the journal entries. That's where the journal mechanism, that's one of the top three things that came out of the third survey, that's actually something we've been doing a bit of work on when we've had the opportunity, as we've been focused on the content marketing and web version. That's something where basically you'd create a journal and you'd say either you own it or you'd say Fred owns it, George, one of your players. And at that point, it's that person, they own it, it's their control. You can rescind it at some point, but you don't have edit capabilities over it unless you take it back from them.
Right.
So, okay. That
There's
is
some place they can put something in without, they can't change anything else, but
right.
whatever's related to that.
That is something that is very high on the to-do list. And that is probably, I won't say this definitively, but at this point, that is most likely to be the first big thing that comes out after the content marketing and web version are out.
One of the things that we're bringing up though about the players, in their view, where is it at all on your calendar to unique player snippet? So when I reveal a
Individual
snippet,
player reveal.
I want that one, but not everyone.
That we refer to as individual player reveal.
Yes.
And that actually, that was basically right in the same ballpark with calendars, I believe. I think that was like 3 or 4, and calendars was like 4 or 5 or something like that. They were like, I don't remember the specifics of the survey, but it's like,
they would way more have that. The calendar don't need to be mean.
Right.
Calendar, that one's way bigger because you do any kind of games where there's. It works good right now with like a Pathfinder or a DB game where it's a party and you all work together. You take that out of that.
if the party is working at odds with each other, then that is not something that RomeWorks currently supports. We've got all of the infrastructure in for that, but we need to there's things that need to be done on the server to support all the detailed syncing control, and there's also stuff we need to do to expose that in the interface, and that can get really fiddly really quick if we don't do it well in the interface. So that's going to require some time and attention to do. But that is very, very high on the list. Based on we did a survey, for those of you who may not know, we did a feature survey the very end of last year, beginning of this year timeframe. And there were I think it was 19 or 20 different major pieces of functionality that were on there that everybody weighed in on. And journals was right there at the top. Calendars were nipping at the heels. Individual player reveal was nipping at the heels. So those are all things that are way high on the priority list. We're also going to be doing another round of the survey so that everybody who's come on board in the last year is going to get a chance to throw their 2 cents in as well. So we'll be doing that around the same time again. So end of this year, beginning of next year timeframe. Any other questions at this time? Okay. Oh, yeah.
One real quick one. Is there a way to get a topic at the root when it's contained by something? You know, you have the root topic, which is like
right.
people, or what was it?
Those are the different categories.
Yeah, the different categories.
The
Basically,
families.
under the category rather than being under the thing.
If it's contained by something,
Yeah.
then there's only 2 options. You can either show everything with containment, in which case it'll always be beneath the thing it's contained by, or you can turn off all containment. So I could go in.
Is there a way to remove the containment for one specific item?
Yeah, I could go in and I could say, for this guy, I think I can do it here. Clear container, yes.
Oh my gosh, is that easy? Thank you.
There's so much stuff here that RomeWorks does that it's easy to not find stuff in the sea of options you've got. So it's the analogy I've started using recently is it's kind of like RomeWorks to campaign development is kind of like InDesign to putting together like PDFs and that type of stuff. It's like this is a sausage making machine basically, and you guys are the sausage makers, with putting your campaign together. But there's so many different ways to piece it all together that there's a lot. So that's why hopefully these seminars are helpful. sounds like this is a good like type moment. Perfect. Other questions?
The thing that interests me about this software, I am an author, and I'm very interested in, instead of having all the Bible of my universe in 20 different Word files, I'm very interested in the relational aspects of this and being able to put stuff in. And I know this is designed for GMs for doing that. Would that work? Will this system work well for authors as well?
Oh, absolutely. The only thing that there's only two real aspects of the product that either won't make sense or will be missing, and that has to do with the reveal mechanism, in that that has no role for you. However, the fact that, but reveal would make sense for you if we did it differently. If we were able to identify the fact that this piece of information was revealed in this book, maybe on page X, sort of thing, or at least in chapter whatever. So you could identify where you've used material. So the stuff that you've built as your canon, where it's been used in your writing thus far, where it's been revealed to readers, and where it hasn't. That's one thing that we would definitely want to do if we wanted to adapt Realmworks to authors. But even without that, I think it would still be extremely useful.
The difference between an author and a GM is the GM doesn't control where the campaign goes. The author does.
Yeah, very true.
That depends on how wild your characters are.
You would need to be able to export that stuff out, though.
Pardon me?
You would be able to export that out to put it in the real.
Actually, that's a very good point. Now that you mention it, that would be a nasty limiting factor right now. So, there's so basically that's true. Right now, there is no way to export out of Realmworks. Basically, we're so focused on features and that sort of stuff. People wanting to get stuff out. On the survey, it was one of the lowest priority items. So that would be a severely limiting factor that I didn't even conceive of. If what you wanted to do was put into Realmworks the text that you were going to, print effectively, then that would, if you wanted to use it as, you put the text into Realmworks and use it as a reference guide for your World Bible effectively, then as long as you didn't want to pull that text out and put it into your book directly, other than copy and paste when you wanted to, use it as fuel, then if you just did that, then you'd be fine.
Okay, you're saying that I could have, now going from the other side, is that the existing fiction that I have written, I could copy that into Realmworks, and then it would propagate all the linkages to all the people?
You could enter all that content and carve it up like I showed earlier. I don't know when you stepped in, but I showed earlier how you can basically paste, if you were to paste stuff out of a PDF, for example, a similar sort of thing, and then you could split it up into the different bits of information. And then you could go ahead and once you saved, it would do all the automatic link detection for everything and link it all up for you. One of the real beauties of Realmworks is all the automatic link detection. So that's a huge, huge time saver. And the fact that you have all the links there now, everything is woven together, and you know what's referenced by who, where, how, and why. And a major difference between Realmworks and wikis will tell you everything this wiki page references. What they won't tell you is everything that references this page. And Realmworks does all that. So if you see over here, I've got here arrows, almost all the arrows are inbound. This topic is referenced by all these other things. It doesn't reference them itself. And in the case of here, you can see the double-headed arrow. It references this topic, and that topic references it back. So, if you want to talk about that in more depth, I'm happy to do so. Just want to focus this on the RPG stuff right now, since that seems to be a little bit off the core focus. Any other questions before I keep going? Okay. All right. And so basically grouping topics, we got group lists for groups, so you can have all the different groups together. It's just gets to figure out what works in your head space and use that, and be consistent with it is the biggest thing to take away. Otherwise, you will find yourself very frustrated because things aren't where you're going to be looking for them down the line. All right, so how are we on time? It's 5:30. Yeah, I want to show this a little bit. Let's switch over here. Let's switch back to Rise of the Rune Lords. One of the key things that is at question for a lot of folks is, how do I model areas, and how do I model like dungeons and that type of stuff? Or it may be if in a sci-fi game, it may be the different on a ship, and you've got the different the different sections of the ship and whatnot. So pretty much from our perspective, we use containment for it, and we use what we call adventure areas. So there's a particular category. Category is basically the definition of a type of topic. So for example, a location is distinct from an individual, is distinct from, in this case, an adventure area. Now what a category basically dictates is what the starting set of material here shows up as. And what I do is I set up Thistletop here, this is out of Rise of the Rune Lords, as an adventure area, and I'll attach a map to it. And what I can do is, if I open that up in a new tab, here's my map, and here I can also go in and see all the map pins and such. So these are all tied to content, and if I single click on it, I go to it. If I go back, I can also then double click on a pin and turn the map into my navigation mechanism. So let's actually zoom this out a bit more. So now I can click on pins and jump around to the various locations on that pin. All right, my voice is really starting to degrade here, so sorry. We've got all the various pins. I can just click on them and bounce around. Some are more interesting than others. So the important thing, though, is if I come back here, I've got Thistletop, and Thistletop has a whole bunch of locations within it that we saw on the map here. And all I've done is they're just children directly beneath. And then level 1, since it's an overland area that then has a number of levels beneath, then those just because the levels themselves become children, and then the rooms within those levels are children as well. Notice how everything is prefixed with the map code from the original map, so you can reference it. Now also you'll notice that here I have a couple of NPCs, and this is just the alias for linkage. This guy and this gal here, they actually will be found in multiple locations on the level. So it doesn't make sense to actually put them in room X or room Y. So they live as a child of the level itself. So that way they can, if they're found in 3 different places, they can, they're accessible directly. You got a question?
Yes, the way you have the containers has nothing to do with that navigation, right?
No, this is totally,
It's independent.
it's totally independent. What I was pointing out here is that there's all the different locations that are basically collapsed all as direct children of the Thistletop topic.
Right, but if I had a map that jumped somewhere else, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, doesn't matter at all. Absolutely. So one of the key things here is, so a dungeon equals an adventure area with levels, and use a prefix identifier. A level equals an adventure area. A ship section might be an adventure area. It really doesn't matter. What we've tried to do with the category structure within Realmworks is try to keep things as generic as possible. we don't want to have RealmWorks be tailored to one particular, fantasy versus horror versus modern versus sci-fi. Now, where that starts to happen is with the selection of tags. And there are certain types of categories where it actually applies to, might apply to a particular type of game. Like there's the dimensional category. Well, you usually only get weird dimensions in either whacked out sci-fi games or in fantasy games. So that category may not have any use to you, in which case you can go ahead and turn it off if you're playing like a modern horror game. There are also other ones that aren't that well suited to fantasy that you probably would want to turn off for fantasy. And just go through the category manager, go through that and just figure out what works. And as I'd also pointed out earlier, you can turn off what initial fields are shown for each of the different categories. You can go ahead and just toggle those off as well. They aren't taken away, they're simply hidden. So you can add them back at any time, and there's nothing to worry about by turning them off. Go ahead.
So within these levels, and as you're defining the levels, is there ways to I guess say tie in bestiary into into that piece of it?
Absolutely. So for example, if I jump back over here, there's the bunyip layer. So if there was a monster entry for the bunyip in here, that would automatically detect and link the monster entry that would be on the article side more than likely.
Just treat the monsters or the bestiary just like NPCs.
Exactly.
Although you don't make an article.
In general, they would monster entries are more like reference material. They're not like if you had a monster, let's say you had an ogre that you gave a couple of, you gave some spellcasting abilities to and that type of stuff. Okay, that makes him more of an NPC because he's tailored. But if you have this is the generic ogre. So yeah, it's everything just links. Treat it as anything else. Pretty much everything in RealmWorks is going to be a topic in one form or another, unless it is definitively like a plot. So it's a storyline. But even a storyline, like with a plot, is going to ultimately turn into a bunch of individual scenes, which will be topics within RealmWorks. So at the end of the day, everything's going to be a topic or a map. That's what everything's going to distill down to.
I had a question about under the mechanics, right? You said you can hide and take things away from
I can create
types of topics that you do. It doesn't have to change as soon as you take that flag off, doesn't it say, hey, this is custom now? You're customizing it a little bit?
No. So there's just placeholders for stuff. Here, you can see with the monster.
Now,
if I went into the managed categories, you're talking about managed categories.
Yeah.
Changing whether something is hidden or shown doesn't basically take off the protection at all. That's totally independent. You can do that with impunity, and you're not gonna actually risk changing anything. You'd actually have to go in and change something concretely, like entity, for example. Here, I could go in and say, like the profile section, I don't want to take it off, and it's not going to complain at all for me.
Some stuff I was reading said, you don't want to stuff, you want to make copies and make changes that way.
If I want to go in and actually change its content, yes, it's going to complain about that. But if I just want to control whether it's shown or not, you can do that with impunity. That's been decoupled because that doesn't change it structurally. That doesn't have any ramifications on the content that's derived from it. That just is whether or not you want it shown. Sure. All right. Go ahead and get rid of that. Let me see, is there anything else here? And then, as I showed the maps with pins to the different encounter areas, the different scenes. All right, so I talked about this a little bit with NISC. Some topics are unnecessary. Another example is non-complex locations. So, for example, all right, so non-complex locations. So this ties back to pins on maps. If I were to go and let's go ahead and get rid of this. And now I get to my bunyip layer and I've got my map. Actually, let's go ahead and let's go here instead, because here's a good example of it that I've already got. I can go. You'll see there's all these pins. And some of these pins have a little yellow flag hanging off of them, and others do not. Like this guy does, this guy does not. So basically, you don't need in a printed book. There's going to be a room entry for the empty storeroom. There's going to be a room entry for the stairs down to the next level. There's going to be a room entry for this is the closet where this stuff was stored. In the same way that I had said that you don't need to create a topic for NISC, you don't need to create a separate topic for the empty storeroom or where they stored the flour or the stairs going down. All you really need is to add a pin, and then the pin can have text associated with it there that you can see. You don't need it to clutter up your list of topics unnecessarily. Feel free to just put it. Yes, thank you. Just as long as it stays this way. That's the gotcha. Okay, thank you. So that's the key thing here is you can go ahead and add notes here. I can go in and edit the pin, and you'll see I've just got a bunch of notes. I can also add GM directions. This is information that's only for you, that even if you reveal this pin to the players, they will not see. And the same thing applies to plots. So let's just jump over here, and I've got, I can go ahead and edit the plot mode, and I can add a bunch of notes in here. And most of these, you'll see there's the icons associated, are associated with a scene topic. But this one is not, because basically the way this works is the PCs go into town and they do the first task, and after that they're just sort of hanging around town, and there's like a handful of different odd tasks that they can get embroiled in any random order the GM feels like doing. So this is just the PCs hanging around in town doing nothing until I decide I'm going to run the shopkeeper's daughter little scene with them. Then I can jump to the boar hunt and go off on those. Ultimately here, when they get the grim news from Mosswood, that's going to take them off on the missing bartender, and that's going to take them into further adventures, which is another subplot. Any questions on that stuff? All right, so some important notes on plots. Plots are a really great way for getting your head wrapped around the basic flow of a plot line in your campaign. You can have any number of plots you want. You can also set up subplots. So just as a very crude example here, Rise of the Rune Lords actually consists of 6 chapters that form the complete adventure path. It's linear, not very interesting. But I can also use this plot. I can use it, drill into it, and now this is 3, the various, I can click on the chapter, and now within that I've got part 1, which has 4 different stages to it. And I can then go in and drill in here. Okay, this is the initial one. I could also go to local heroes, which we just saw. Everything, I can go back up to the containing. I can navigate around, and then what I can also do is I can actually associate content with stuff. So I can view associated contents. Oops, here we go. That's where I want to view the associated contents. So now it's loading up the actual scene from the plot. So I can use the plot to basically map out the basic flow. I used to refer to them as flows, so we pick plots, because it really is like a flow chart. What's the sequence of events? What are the decision points the players are going to run into? How does things branch off? And at the end, each one of these plot points is going to end up yielding some sort of scene or situation the players are going to need to resolve. Or it's going to drill down into a side quest that's got its own 5 or 6 different pieces to the overall plot. I can go in, I'm not going to spend any real time on how plots are constructed, other than basically show you real quickly. I can come in and I can go ahead and change how things work. So now I can either go from here to and have this in between drop in, or I can bypass it completely. I can create new nodes and splice those in. So I create a new plot point. I just put something random in, and now it's not connected to anything, but I could basically bring it in here. So now I've got 2 ways into the overall flow of stuff. This could actually also go straight to the initial assault, and so it's going to basically redesign everything and try to figure out a way to make it look decent, to keep it all together for you. Yeah.
You can reveal individual plot points.
Yes.
What does that mean? Because isn't everything at the base just topics or maps?
Ultimately, I guess I didn't say that clearly earlier, in that the actual substantive material of your campaign will ultimately find its way into topics or the maps. However, plots give you an excellent way of sort of mapping things out at a higher level, and sort of sketching out the overall flow of stuff. Think of it like, and the reason we call them storyboards, if you think of like a movie will have a storyboard where it's kind of like, okay, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens, and there'll be like a mock-up of just a sketch of the scene that might represent anywhere from, it might be a 30-second scene, it might be a 5-minute scene. So you need to that would be fleshed out within the actual scene itself and what's going on. So a plot, the actual substance of the Swallowtail Festival here will ultimately be a scene topic, but the high level about it stays here at the plot. And for revealing it, where that ties in is with, you can reveal the plot to the players so they can see the high level view of how the story has unfolded.
Okay.
And then they can use that same high level view to then follow the links and drill in to get to the more detailed bits.
Okay.
So it's really a way of, if as a GM you work at the very high level and then want to drill down into the details, plots are a great entry point.
Okay. So
And
if you want to reveal the plot line to the players, then you can reveal it to them one scene at a time.
Exactly. Yes. And if you are a GM that goes straight to the crunchy details, but you have players that are more, high level types, you still might find it useful to, after you've built out all the crunchy details, to create a high level plot that will be helpful to your players. And totally up to you, however you want your game. You can use them, you cannot use them. Just some ideas to consider. All right, so we covered that stuff. So I can go into some of the details of how we're going to do some market content, or I can field some more questions. We've got like 15-ish minutes, I think. No, we've got 8 minutes left.
I'd really like to see the market content.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Starter market content.
Okay.
Because I've been waiting for this for a while.
Okay. The content that we're going to be doing through the marketplace, there's basically 4 key pieces beyond like the stuff you guys would fundamentally assume and expect. So let's say Rise of the Rune Lords, Pirate's Guide to Freeport. Well, you expect there to be everything that is in the book you bought, or the PDF you would buy, or what have you. If it's not there, then we failed. So these are pieces that go over and above that. So there's the basic package details. Not going to belabor that. That's basically the legal stuff, the credits, the cover art. We're done. There's what we call the source topic and source article. Basically, actually, Sources are basically the entry point into the content. Is there? Oh, yeah, she's dealing with it. Great. All right. It's the entry point for both GMs and players. That's an important thing to keep in mind. The source is for GMs and players. Therefore, it does not, should not, must not convey any spoiler information. So, best analogy to think of there is it's like for an adventure, it's the overview that you might read the 2 paragraphs on the back of the module on the store shelf, or the 2 paragraphs that are on the website where you're buying it. For reference material, the source actually can serve as like a table of contents and a link to all the different chapters and articles. And some content, like adventure paths from Paizo and that type of stuff, are actually going to contain both. They're going to contain a source on both the story side and on the reference side. So let me take a quick look at that stuff. If I go with, is that now? Where's, here we, I'll just jump here. All right, I think this is, so here, Rise of the Rune Lord's Adventure Path, you've got just the stuff that's off the back of the packaging, basically, because it's on the story side. On the mechanics side, let's actually switch to a different tab for that. Come on, brain. And we've got a separate source here. And you'll see it's got a list of the new spells, the main magic items. Not all this stuff is entered, but you can see like the new monsters are entered, and those would all be linked, so you can basically, it becomes a quick access way to jump right into whatever you want. If we bounce back here, the main piece gets into what we call the synopsis. Now there's both, I mentioned here, there's both a GM synopsis and a player synopsis. They are distinct. And I'll give you one guess as to what's targeted for who. The GM synopsis is basically a roadmap for the GM. It's basically going to set the stage for everything that the GM needs to know to run the campaign. So there's going to be bits in here that are pulled text from the very beginning of the book, pulled right out and dropped in. That's kind of like stuff you need to get going. There's also going to be stuff in here where you've got convenient little jump points for the GM to dive into the various chapters of the book, various other aspects of it, links to additional material or specific topics of key interest to the GM when running it, and then how to run the game, etc. We've got the credits in here. Those need to get moved out to the package stuff. And then on the player side, it's a whole bunch of stuff. Now, how many of you guys use the Realm starting point topic? The home page effectively for your realm. Great. For those of you who don't, the whole purpose of the home page, if I bring up another tab, it will be totally uninteresting here. But the whole point is to provide a single entry point to your campaign that the players can go to, and you can provide a whole bunch of links to the other aspects that are really important in your campaign. The key NPCs, the key plot elements, any sort of house rules, that sort of stuff. It sets the frame and provides a link to all those different aspects so the players can start here, and it's basically the homepage of your website if you were to put your realm up on a website. It's how to get them in and going to the various facets of your realm. And they've also got access to everything in the navigation pane, but once you've revealed 500, 1,000 topics, maybe more if you've got a big campaign going, then at that point, it can quickly become a lot of information that the players are swimming through, and this becomes a way to provide a quick and easy vector in for them. Now the difference is, let's go back here, player synopsis. What the content does is it actually sets up the exact same thing for this particular piece of purchase content. You may play as your campaign, you may get a module or an AP or what have you, and plug it into your existing ongoing campaign. So what you can do is you can actually take this player synopsis topic, add an entry to it on your realm starting point topic, and link directly to it, and you're off and going. And you can also fill in whatever house rules apply to your game, etc., and provide links to that sort of stuff. And that just links in here, and you'll notice a bunch of stuff is pre-revealed. So the moment that you reveal this topic, the players will immediately know the overview. They'll immediately know the character tips. They'll immediately know the various information on the campaign traits and the important people, places, and plots that are going on within your campaign. But you'll notice down here, nothing's revealed. But these are all the key people, key places, key plots, and they're already ready to go. All you need to do is reveal the snippet, and now the players have instant access to that stuff once you've actually gotten to that point in the campaign where they've learned about this stuff. And then we've just got it broken down. Yeah.
Is that only links to within Realmworks? I mean, or you put in links to say outsource outside material?
You can put in normal HTML. You could put an HTTP link in there to a YouTube video, to some reference web page. For people who play Pathfinder, you may want to put a reference to like the D20 PFSRD or something like that for reference. You can drop in whatever you want. If it's a link to a topic, or a plot or something, that Realmworks have it baked in. If it's a link to like a web page, or we just have added, it's not released yet, but it'll be in the next update. We've got tie-ins now with Sirenscape. We're sharing a booth with this year. It's going to be in the next release. We're showing it here, but it hasn't been. Sirenscape has released their end of it right before the show. That's part of the next big release we're doing for Realmworks. So that hasn't gone out yet. That'll be going out in the week or two after Gen Con. So the player synopsis is basically the Realm starting point for this particular piece of material pre-made for you, ready to go. What else do we have here? It's 6 o'clock? Okay. Then that's good. Nothing else here is critical. Thank you guys very, very much.
Thanks for watching our Gen Con 2015 seminar, Realmworks, Tips, Tricks, and the Upcoming Content Market. Be sure to explore the other videos on our channel and make sure to check out Realmworks on our website, www.getrealmworks.com.